Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Ask Me Monday, episode number 101, where we will be doing a 101 on wire knitting and wire crocheting. Now, for some odd reason, and I think because I have used every ounce of life in my poor phone, it looks like I'm a little bit wispy. I'm a little like Barbara Walters glow right now. Not a filter, just where my camera is right now. So it is what it is, but I'm so glad to be here with you today. We are going to be doing some fun stuff that's perfect for the summer. But as always, I love to start off Ask Me Monday by learning about what you have been making over the weekend, whether it's cooking or knitting or sewing or crocheting or drawing or whatever it is. And if you have a link to a pattern or a project tutorial you can share, please do that. We also love knowing where you're from. Karen, hello from the Netherlands. I'm here in my home studio in Austin, Texas. Hi to Deborah. So nice to see you. Hi, Debbie, too. Please just remember that these boards are your community. Chat with each other, touch base, and share projects. For me, I worked on this project, what we're going to be working on today over the weekend, and then I kind of started working on the crochet version of the July Yarnier subscription box project. So forecasting a little bit. June will actually open up on June 13th for new spots. So we only have so many spots for the first 3 months. That's just how I bought inventory. So we have to wait for people to maybe pause or cancel before we open up. So I will know within the next couple of days what spots knitting and crochet will be covered in July. I've designed 2 projects that are the same, as close as you can get and still be knitting and crochet so that everybody feels included. So go to yarnier.com and put yourself on the waiting list if you're not already there. And I will share an unboxing also on my Facebook page and YouTube channels, both the Knit Show and my personal one. Alrighty, so today what we are going to be doing, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of a 101 on just working with wire if you're a knitter or a crocheter. Specifically though, I always like when you can apply the lessons that you're learning to a quick project, and so we will be doing that today. Oh, and then at the end of this episode, I will also be telling who the winners of last week's 100th episode giveaway were. So stay tuned, stick close. I'll also tag them later in case they're not watching right now. Okay, so we will be making rings today. These are a really fun project, maybe because your kitten lost your wedding ring like mine did a couple months ago. Or maybe you just want a quick project or you want to make gifts. I think that these are really fun to experiment with different beads. Again, we've got this sort of like Doris Day, Barbara Walters glaze going over the shot, so hopefully you can see. This would be really fun for a slumber party or like a girls' wine night in. You could set out a table with wire and needles and beads or whatever. Really fun gifts. You can set this aside for, maybe future teacher gifts when we're back in session, whatever. Or maybe you just want to learn how to learn a new skill. So I'm going to cover, I've got both of your backs, knitters and crocheters. I'm going to cover both. So I will turn the camera around in just a second as soon as I go over what you will need to have for this project. Also, I have written up instructions for both knitting and crochet rings. You can find them at VickieHowell.com. I will also post that link in the comments section after this broadcast. All right, and before I forget, and before we get started, please make sure that you've liked the Vickie Howell page on Facebook and also clicked to follow so that you are notified when these videos happen. On YouTube, you have to subscribe and also click the little bell notification. They make it very difficult, but all I can do is pass along the information. Okay, so first, what you're going to need is needles or hooks. This episode was brought to us by Knitter's Pride if you're in North America, or Knit Pro if you are elsewhere. They've been supporting the last several of these videos, and it's been so lovely to work with them. So you're going to either need a Waves crochet hook. I used a USD, which is a 3.25 millimeter. You could also use a C. It doesn't really matter. You kind of just have to see what works for you. Crochet in particular has a very subjective gauge. And it's good to see people still rolling in. Hi, Lori. Good to see you. She is watching from Michigan. Lovely. Okay, if you're working with knitting, you do not need double pointed needles for these, but I like working with 2 of these. I like the length, and I just found that it was much easier than if I was working with long straights. You could use circulars. It really doesn't matter, but I like these carbons. These are Knitter's Pride carbons. When working with wire, I've found that if you work with bamboo or wood, sometimes the wire can cause grooves in that wood, which means that you can't ever use those needles again for yarn. And so I recommend using some form of metal needle if possible. And I like these because they have the really slick tips, but they're a little less slippery on the actual needle. So that helps when working with metal. You're getting the slip where you need it, but not where you don't. Okay, so next up, you will need wire. So I experimented with some different craft wire. Now, you can absolutely get gold-plated and sterling silver wire after you've practiced and you're feeling comfortable and maybe you want to go up to semi-precious gemstones. I recommend just starting out with straight-up craft supplies. So first I tried with I want to say this was a 26 gauge wire. I really didn't enjoy working with it. It totally worked for a ring. It just was really hard on my hands and I felt that it was a bit too stiff. So what I did is I went down to a 28 gauge yarn. The higher the number, the thinner, the finer the yarn, finer the wire. So that's what I've made all of these out of. You experiment with what you like. I imagine that using some kind of cable jewelry wire that doesn't kink could also be interesting too and might be softer on the fingers. This gauge is perfectly fine and comfortable to wear, but it would even be more comfortable if you were working with a more flexible material, I imagine. So just experiment and have fun. It's good to see you, Joyce, who's having her lunch break with us. Lovely, lovely. Okay, so next is beads. Really, unlike when we talked about knitting and crocheting with beads, which we did, I believe, 3 episodes ago. And again, if you want to watch past episodes, if you're on Facebook, you just click on the videos tab on my page and you'll see the playlist. And there's also an Ask Me Monday playlist on my YouTube channel. Okay, so we talked about stringing beads on yarn and how it really mattered, like the size of the hole, and you had to use an auxiliary thread and that kind of thing. Wire is really easy. It's already rigid enough, so you don't need to use any separate needle. And since you're using such a fine gauge, most beads actually just slide right on, which is really great. Oh, Meredith is also eating lunch with us. Good to see you. Okay, so I've chosen, you can get all kinds of craft beads. I thought one of the rings that I made was using these little, let's see. You know what? I'm going to flip the camera around so that you can see this better. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip, and this is pretty, but let's try. Okay. I think this will be easier. So I used a bunch of different types of beads. Remember I told you all that my tripod had been WD-40? Well, guess what? That's what you're seeing now. Okay, so I really liked these beads that I got. Again, these are just from my craft store. They weren't expensive, and they came with a million of them. So this would be a good route to go if you were having a party and you wanted to make a bunch of them. These are just these fun little, they look like little, I don't know, they almost look like little pieces of jade or whatever, or little like stones that you'd find on the beach, but they have holes in them. So those are fun. So I did one ring with that, and you can see those here. And they came with varying colors. This is all from one pack. I got these in the States. I think these were from Joann, but you can, all craft stores have beads, so just go and experiment. Okay, and then I got just a bunch of just plain kind of large seed beads, so exaggerated, not, they're not tiny like the other ones, although you could do tiny. And then I found some round ones that were kind of look like turquoise, which I really dig. Just different colors. These all came on long strands, and they were having a sale when I was in there on strands, so I could have a party of 20 people over, and we could all make these. So that is that. So now that you've got and one more thing, you want to make sure that you have either like kitchen scissors that you don't care about or jewelry pliers. It's so thin that you don't need anything hardcore, but you don't want to use your regular, yarn scissors on them. for obvious reasons. Okay, let's get started. So first what we're going to do is we're going to work on a crochet version. All right, so these two are both crocheted. This one, so midi rings are really on trend right now, which means you just wear them on the, like up to the, I would say it's the middle of your finger. It's not really, they call it midi rings, but it's really the middle of the top part of your finger. And so this one is made that size, or it could be a pinky ring, or, you know, I'll probably give it to my 9-year-old daughter afterwards. This one is obviously larger. And really the great thing about this and the pattern that you'll find on VickieHowell.com is that you just want to work until you get to 1/4 of your ring, or your finger circumference. And then you'll start your beading, and then you just keep working until you get your piece as long as you need to it. So it's really easy, and you can kind of just work and make things right. Okay, so I'm going to grab my hook and my wire. The first step, whether you're knitting or crocheting, is to pre-string your beads. So for these, I used anywhere between 3 and 9 beads. I didn't feel like I needed a ton of them with these big ones. You could just use one if you had a bigger stone. It's really up to you. For this, since I'm just going to show you a couple, I'll just grab a couple beads of these smaller ones, and you just, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just straight up. And Alexis, viewer Alexis had a great suggestion for working on a cookie tray so that nothing gets lost and rolls off the table. I think that that is a great suggestion. I like using these little, we bust these out when we're having people over and we put olives in them or whatever. There are little kitchen dishes. I find them really helpful. Okay, so you get as many beads as you want for the whole ring threaded on. You're going to move those out of the way. And then you can do a regular old slip knot, just as you would if you were crocheting with yarn. Move my stuff to the left-hand side. Hello, Bonita in Ontario, Canada. Okay, so we are going to start by chaining 4. So just as you would with yarn, you do it with wire. There is really nothing to it. And you can see how flexible this 28 gauge yarn is. Let's see. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. All you need to know is that you want to chain 1 more than the total amount of stitches that you want. And I recommend having an odd number when you're done so that you can do the beads in the center. But again, you're the artist here. You do whatever makes your whole heart happy. Okay, then we're going to single crochet. If you're in the US, it would be double crochet if you are in the UK, in the second chain from hook. So this would be the first chain from hook, second chain. We're just going to, and what's great about these wave hooks is that, you know, this can be slippery working wire and metal, but you've got this really nice flat grip here, and that helps a lot with the maneuvering. Okay, so we've done, and then we're going to single crochet in the next stitch, and finally in the last stitch. And again, all of the material information is on VickieHowell.com. Okay, so now we're going to turn our piece, and we would just continue in this manner for 1/4 of, we're going to chain 1 to start our new row, and that of course gets you to the height that you need to. And then you're going to work under both loops of the wire, just like you would if you were using yarn, and you'll just single crochet in those next 2 stitches. And you'll notice that it's really malleable, so you can move it. If you don't see exactly where that hook's supposed to go, just kind of pull it with your hand, with your fingers, and you can find it. Okay, so you'll just keep going until it's the, 1/4 of the overall circumference. For the purposes of this demonstration, though, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to beading. All right, so we're going to chain 1 to start our new row. For crochet, you can add your beads on the right side of the row and it'll work, or right side of the project. So you're just going to slide the bead up, excuse me. First, you're going to insert the hook. And again, see, it's a little bit difficult to see, so I just pull on it. I'm going to insert my hook. And that is where my bead slides down. So now I've inserted the hook. I have not at all yarned over yet. Now I'm yarning over and pulling that through. And then and you can see that all I had to do was push that bead through the front. With crochet, you can actually do it on either side and make it work. You can just pull it through. And then you work the rest of the stitch as normal. And that's your next bead. Okay, so for this one, the pattern calls for just one bead all the way. And then on the way back, you would turn and you would just work a straight row. Because I have you right here, I'm going to go ahead and work another bead, even though that's not what the pattern calls for, just so you can see it again. Okay, so I'm going to what would be the next stitch. I'm inserting my hook. And yep, I'm under both of those loops. I'm going to pull my next bead up. You can see they just slide right up. I'm going to yarn over, pull through, push my bead with my finger so I can make sure it's at the front. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And your single crochet, if you're in the US, double if you're in the UK, has been completed. That is all there is to it. Simple as that. Do it in any pattern that you like. You can do, one like I've done here. You can do several like on the knitted one, which I'll show you later. Really just have fun with it and play with it. I'm doing them. I chose, now with crochet, what's fun is, as I said, you can do it on either the right side or the wrong side. You just have to push it through. Even though I did one plain row, one beaded row, you actually could do them every other row. And then you would just, again, once you were done with your beads, you would continue in single crochet, double crochet in the UK, until you had the length of your piece, and then fasten off just like you would with yarn, but you would take your little snips and you would make sure that you had a long enough tail to seam it, which I will show you later. Yarn over, pull it through. Okay, now obviously that's not how long it's going to look, but you get the idea. Okay. Hi, Alita from Canada. Nice to see you. Okay, so now let's move over to knitting. So for knitting, I'm using teeny tiny needles. Again, they do not have to be double pointed needles. I just found that I liked the length of them. These are US 1 2.25 millimeters. I found that I like to use a smaller gauge knitting needle than I did hook, which often is the case when I work. I just felt like it gave me a better mesh. The ring that is knit is this one that I'm wearing. And they look very similar. They really do. I have to say that I found knitting with beads, with wire, kind of easier than I found crochet. But that may just be the mood that I was in at the time. All right, I'm just going to pre-string some beads again. Okay, and now we're going to cast on. Now for casting on, hi Tammy in Missouri, nice to have you here. We're going to use the backwards E wrap cast on. So we just wrap that wire around our, actually, I'm going to do it this way, around our thumb, insert, and pull. Now, unlike with yarn, you do not want this to be taut at all. You want there to be a big enough loop that you know that you're not going to have to struggle with on your first row. All right, so you're just going to keep doing that. All you're doing is wrapping around your thumb and placing the stitch on your hook or needle. Oh, Donna, I'm glad you have all the supplies. Please make sure to tag it at Vickie Howell if you make them. I love seeing the projects that you're working on. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, the pattern for all of these rings are on VickieHowell.com. Okay, so now I've cast on my stitches just using that E-wrap cast on. The great thing about wire is you don't have to worry about it coming off at all. And again, this is a size 1 Knitter's Pride Carbons needle. Gauge isn't all that important though, so you can kind of figure out, whoops, I turned it the wrong way. You can kind of figure out what works for you. The one reason that would be good to use a double pointed needle though is if you wanted to experiment with I-cord and beading, which I think is beautiful. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do, I've gotten a little excited and got my beads up too much, is you want to just go ahead and knit that first row. And this is why I said to not pull taut, because you really would be wrestling with the wire. You want to make sure that there's a clear path for your needle to go in. Oops, I just slipped and I just got out of camera. Let me try that again. I think I'm also going to take the midi ring off so it's not catching on there. Okay, so you're just going to work all the way across. And the first row, as is always the case in knitting and crochet, is always the most precarious. Okay, now that one slipped off my needle, but you can see how easy it is just to take your, or not, to take your loop with your finger and get it over there. Okay, so that's your first row. And then you would just continue knitting as you normally would. Just like for the crochet project, you'll work for about 1/4 of the circumference you want, unless you want beads all the way around. And then you can just, you know, as I always say, you do you. Now, the thing to consider with knitting that is not really the consideration for crochet is that you need to, whoops, I totally missed a stitch. Let me go back and get that one. You need to add your beads on a wrong side row when you're knitting. So this technically right now is a right side row. I know that because of where my tail is. And as you can see, the first couple rows, getting that last stitch can sometimes be a little fussy. But as the piece grows, it gets easier and easier. Okay, so now let's just pretend that this is the wrong side so that I can get to the goods. We want to, for this pattern, we're knitting the first stitch. Then I'm going to slide up my bead. We are going to then slide the bead up, yarn over, wrap your yarn and knit that stitch. And you'll notice, this is why we work on the back, it's going to automatically push to the front. And it doesn't easily push through to the opposite side like a crocheted stitch would. Then what I do is I take a little tug of your working wire just to make sure that it's sitting in a nice bed of wire down here instead of hanging. All right, so then for this pattern, I'm using 3 beads in a row. So it's time for me to slide my beads back up. And sometimes you'll get a little kink in the wire and so it gets stuck, so you just need to kind of maneuver it. Get it in place. Knit that stitch. Give it an extra tug. Keep going. And then you would just continue adding another bead and then knitting the other one. And then just like with crochet, you would then work back with one plain row, but you can see how these are sitting nicely on the front. And you would just do that just like you would for crochet as far as measurements go. You'd continue working every other row in beads. This one's knit. And then you would work the rest. It technically would be the last 1/4 if you got this measurement right, but I honestly, it doesn't really matter. You can just do it until it's the right size. And then you want to weave in your ends, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, on one end, and the end that you bind off on, and you'll bind off just like you would with yarn, the end, you want to make sure that your tail is long enough for seaming. So to seam it, all you need to do is put end to end just like you would, or to form a ring. And you don't have to worry about doing any fancy stitch or, oh, how funny, my wire just broke. Figures. Hold on one second. I'm going to fake something because the wire just broke. I've never had that happen before. The cool thing is, though, if that does happen, because you're working with wire, I actually love when this stuff happens because it's these teaching moments that you wouldn't organically think of. You can just twist it back on and keep going. All right, so now we have our tail, and really all you need to do is feed it through and whip stitch together. So now I need to go over to the opposite side. And, you know, be gentle. As we saw, it can break. That is sort of the risk you take working with a wire that is comfortable to work with on your hands and that does not, that's malleable enough to form in the right way. So you're just going to continue all the way to the end. And you just feed it through. And I'm kind of straddling the camera right now, so forgive me that this is taking a second. And you would just do that all the way to the end. And then you give it a little tug, and you'll keep going. And so let's pretend that we've finished. In the interest of time, I won't make you watch me finish the whole thing. Then what you want to do is you want to weave in your ends, and you do it exactly sort of in the same manner. I'm just kind of taking the wire and weaving it around, kind of like you would with yarn. You know, just kind of weave it in and out. Oh, Han from Denmark, so nice to have you here. Hi, Marie. Okay, so you would keep going. You're going to weave it in, kind of under, whoops, sorry, got out of frame, over, under. And then once you're satisfied with that, you just take your, and know that I didn't finish sewing this, so it's going to be a little bit open. You take your pliers, you snip it, and then you just manipulate the wire till you're happy with it, and you are done. Suzanne from Puerto Rico, so nice to see you here. And that's really all there is to it. Super fun, super easy. I know that I was in and out of frame for a second. I am actually straddling the camera so I can see that, but sometimes I have to manipulate the piece. So we're all in this together. And that's really all there is to it. It's really fun and really easy. And it's a great way to kind of keep on stitching during these warmer months. As we have discussed before, this is a great time of year to practice all those things that you will not get to play with when we get into our busy knitting and crochet season, right? When we're getting towards the holidays and winter weather. So you can watch this video obviously here. You can watch it on Facebook, you can watch it on YouTube, but also if you want to go back and watch, we recently did open weave for knitting, open weave for crochet, knitting and crocheting with beads. There's a scarf project. Last week we covered the basic recipe for socks, and y'all seem to like that one, so maybe we'll do some more socky stuff too. So if you don't already, let me get you out of the light. If you don't already, please make sure that you follow my Facebook page and click, you have to click like and follow so that you are notified when these videos go up weekly. If you are watching on YouTube, please click on that subscribe button and also the notification bell so that you will be alerted. All right. How about some winners? So we had these amazingly generous gifts from Knitter's Pride and Knit Pro. And they were helping to celebrate my 100th episode last week. And we have 2 winners. So there were 2 prizes. One is a marbles interchangeable set plus, what was the second thing that we were giving? Oh, and the marbles DPNs. I blocked that out because I'm jelly because I don't have that one. DPN set. The other one was a set of waves crochet hooks and the lace blocking pins, which are brilliant. I use them all the time. So the winners are, for the knitting pack, we are giving it to Heidi Shepdeck. Congratulations, Heidi Shepdeck. Please email your mailing address to submissions@vickiehowell.com. That's submissions@vickiehowell.com. For our crochet winner, we have Karen Ubelacker. Karen, please also email your mailing address to submissions@vickiehowell.com, and the folks at Stitchcraft Marketing on behalf of Knitters Pride and Knit Pro will get those out to you as soon as possible. All right, I will not be here next week. Next Monday, I am actually art directing a commercial that's not related to knitting or crochet at all. So I will be out next Monday, but I will be back here on the 23rd. So June 23rd at noon Central Time, of course, here on my Facebook page and then later on YouTube. All right, thank you everyone, as always, for spending at the beginning part of your week with me. I so enjoy our time together, and I am looking forward to seeing you again in a couple weeks. Don't forget to get your name added to the Yarnier waitlist if you're interested in that June box. And of course, don't forget, while you're at home and have the kids at home and you're hanging out by the pool or whatever, there's still that season 1 of The Knit Show at thenitshow.com or on the YouTube channel that you can re-watch all of those episodes. There are a ton of great sort of lightweight, fun projects there too to make. All right, have a great rest of your week. Please take a little time to be kind to yourself and creative. Bye.